What's up, guys? This is Adi, and I'm back with a very special guest. This interview, we are talking to Andy Mattioli from the IS Romapress podcast. You can check them out, IS Romapress. They have a great website. The show is lovely, and I saw that they're on YouTube now as well, so you can catch them everywhere. We're going to be talking to Andy, and we're going to be talking about not just his experiences as a fan of Roma and Italian football, but also kind of talking about where Olympiacos and Roma have overlapped. And we're going to talk about that very shortly. Andy, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Ari. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on here and talk about Roma Olympiacos connection.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And there's quite a bit we get to discuss here, especially with a recent acquisition, we'll say, of Roma within the last not even 2 years now with Lina Suluku. So excited to talk about her. But before we do, as we always do, we like to get to know our guest a little bit better. And in this case, we want to know how you got started with Roma. Now, off camera, you've told me some amazing background how you guys got started. Give the listeners a little bit about your background, not just in football in Roma, but how you started and how you guys started at Roma Press.
Sure. Well, my story with Roma really begins with my story in Italy, and in Italy, I lived a bit all over the place, and I spent some years in Rome, but I moved around a lot, and I moved also outside of Italy a lot, and then Roma was always somewhere there in the background, and I was always surrounded by kids who were experiencing joy by being fans of the teams that were successful at the time. So Inter, Milan, Juve, and you could see the joy on their faces, and then you'd see the fans of Roma, and you could tell they've been through a lot, and for some godforsaken reason, I stuck to that, and I thought, hey, you know what? I'm gonna follow that team, and I'm gonna inflict a lifetime of pain and unhappiness upon myself. That's what happened. So I was the kid, I was the kid. It was me and another kid in the schoolyard wearing Totti shirts, and everybody else was Del Piero and Trezeguet and
Of course.
whatever. And we were the miserable ones, but somewhere there was something very romantic. I mean, one of my first instances of just remembering what it felt like being a Roma fan was watching Manchester United butcher us 7-1. Um, After I think the first leg ended in 1-1, and so I was all happy and hopeful about the return leg, and then no, nada, no chance of going forward. You're getting eliminated and humiliated, and I think some of that pain, some of that disappointment lingered on and stayed with me until I got to work with John on Roma Press. We got together again. These things happen via Twitter. And John just was looking for a partner in crime to run this podcast, which then took off, and we made it 6 years now, over 6 years now together with this podcast. We've released, I think we're going to be on for 500 episodes in a couple of weeks.
Wow.
We have a great following, really, from all over the world. On a recent live stream, there was even someone that was commenting all the way from Samoa. So, you think these clubs are very much grounded in their local reality, but they're not. They take off, and there is all these people with incredible stories following them from all corners of the earth. And like with Roma is not a club known for winning, and yet we have people who are absolutely devoted to this team, as if this team had given them their greatest satisfaction. Uh, so here we are, 6 years later, huge following, a growing presence in social media. Yes, we've launched now YouTube. It's very slowly taking off. But it's always a pleasant surprise to me to see just how these football clubs that we think are very local, Greece, Italy, and yet they cross borders and they take on completely new stories with themselves.
Absolutely, and I know we can relate to that. Obviously, Serie A is a much bigger, more commercial league than the Greek league is, but heading up to the Conference League, we were doing a big campaign of support for Olympiacos ahead of it, and we were getting messages and photos from West Africa, from East Africa, from South America. We have followers that are in Korea, Japan. The whole thing just blows your mind when you realize, and the funny thing is too, the clubs themselves don't even really understand or realize the reach that they have either. We spoke to the vice president of Olympiacos, Kostas Karapapas, and even he kind of admitted that it's like, no, you don't realize how big these clubs are until some of these projects like Romapress or like ours, they come out, you realize like the reach. It's not just
Yeah,
Greek
yeah.
speaking or
There's
Italian
there, there's
speaking
there's
people.
people there's people who are starved for information. One of the comments that we
Right.
get is, Thank you guys for bringing information that would normally be inaccessible to us in English, so that we can understand, so that we can follow along the updates. Because yes, that's the way it is. A lot of people have this passion, and there is only one thing that you can't get rid of in a person. You can a person can lose money, a person can lose their spouse, everything, all their belongings, but they can't get rid of their passion. It's something that will stay on
Exactly.
forever.
We said during COVID and like when times are tough, it's like, you know what? 'Cause especially when things were bad, like for Olympiacos the last 2 seasons, like you always had this, whatever problems you had, you always had Olympiacos there to kind of make you forget about it. So when things go bad, it's doubly worse because then your passion isn't fixing anything temporarily at least. So that's always the case.
That's for sure, and I think, I mean, COVID definitely, changed a lot of things for a
Yeah.
lot of clubs, and also for the fans, because really, uh, prior, yes, one can argue that with Roma it was the case of Mourinho coming over, but also as soon as those gates opened, as soon as the restrictions were lifted, you could see just the fans had stopped taking going to the stadium for granted. And Roma have been on a run, on an unbelievable run of about 60 consecutive sold out stadiums, which hadn't happened in years and years. And now people are flocking in, people are traveling to Rome. A lot of our patrons are spending I think all of their savings, their honeymoon is going to shit, because they're flying half across the world to watch Roma lose against Empoli on a Sunday night. But that's what people want, and that's what people get.
Absolutely. Now, talk to me a little bit about the environment of Italian football. We've already kind of off camera talked about that so many similarities. We've talked about the similarities and misery of our Patreon groups. Uh, some patrons of which are going to be listening to this, obviously. So, talk to us a little bit about the environment around Italian football. We know that Italy has kind of a similar issue as Greece does. There's just a huge conversation about the horrible stadiums, the old stadiums. We've got very old stadiums. Before I got their new stadium, the Hagia Sophia, Olympiacos' stadium was the newest quote unquote stadium around. And that stadium technically was just redone like over 20 years ago. So it's a similar issue with stadiums. There's a similar bureaucratic environment, similar toxicity around those bureaucracies and politics. Talk to us a little bit about that and what that's like for clubs to
Sure.
navigate.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reality is indeed similar, because the reality is of an old system managed by people who are completely out of touch with the international landscape. People who can't get any TV deals done. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to find that most of the Serie A games on TV wherever you're watching from the world, just because Serie A is really bad at getting these deals done. Look at the TV rights for Premier League clubs such as Everton. I mean, Everton, who are absolutely horrendous, in debt, a team that's struggling, a team that is the favorite for relegation in the Premier League, is earning more than Inter, who just won the Scudetto this past season. Okay, so the worst team in the Premier League will still make more money off of TV rights than the best team in Italy. That's not up to chance. That's up to infrastructure, TV deals, the whole prestige of it. Unfortunately, Italy is managed by a lot of corrupt individuals, and that spreads well into politics, into the fact that if you want to build a stadium, you have to run it by 300 different people who all sit behind the desk and have no idea what you're trying to do. And one of them can veto it, as simple as that, or in Rome, if we've been trying to build a new stadium for Roma for years and years, the first project, which was launched with the previous ownership of James Pallotta, fell through because they found frogs living in the area that was planned, where the stadium was planned to be built. Frogs. Okay, so that was the project was called off also because of that. It was stalled because they had found frogs living in this abandoned area of Rome, on the periphery. And
Endangered frogs, like a specific
no,
endangered.
not endangered frogs. It was just random frogs. Like that's part of the reason why it collapsed. And now Roma are trying to get another stadium project underway, hopefully for the club's 100th anniversary, because it's unthinkable to still be in the 21st century and in Italy in a major league. You have two teams playing in the same stadium. Roma and Lazio, two historic rivals, have to share the Stadio Olimpico, which is a nice stadium, but it's too old, it's decrepit, it's really, and you basically are sitting so far away from the pitch. But that's the reality of Italian football. There is this almost like a disease, something that makes the people that run it unable to cope with progress. They don't know. You even look at the broadcast of Serie A, compare it to the broadcast of La Liga, compare it to the broadcast of the Premier League, compare it to the broadcast even of Bundesliga. I mean, it's we're talking about just a completely different reality. It's a really bad product. We have, there are these American ownerships such as Roma's, that these American investors that go into it thinking that it's going to be simple, and then they realize it's not simple. Same thing happened at Fiorentina have one of the richest men in the world running it, Rocco Commisso. He can't get a stadium done. You can't get it done in Florence. He can't get it done. Same thing for Milan. Jerry Cardinale, another wealthy American, goes into business in Milan, tries to get a stadium started. Nothing. They can't get a stadium done in Milan. Same thing for Inter. That's the thing, is even the supposedly big clubs are all crippled by the same politics. For Roma, that has meant that for many years the club was really drowning in this feeling of provinciality. And I think that's why it's also worth talking about Lina Soloco, because Lina Soloco, uh, along with the Friedkins, who are Roma's current owners, they represent a step in the right direction, a step that Roma clearly want to take to get closer to that reality of the Premier League. Not for nothing, the Friedkins were rumored to be interested in buying Everton and adding it to the list of clubs that they own. That deal fell through just because Everton are in too much debt. But that's the reality that Roma are strive for. That's what they're building. They want to build a brand. They want to build an appeal. They want to build upon what you just said, the fact that there's all these people all over the world that want to follow the team. Hence, Roma have partnerships and sponsorships in Japan, Korea. They had a tour a year and a half ago in Japan. They played an international friendly recently at the end of last season in Australia with Milan. All of these things, show that Roma are trying to actually get into the 21st century of football. Unfortunately, Serie A, not so much.
And now you guys have partnerships with Saudi Arabia. That's courtesy of Lino Suluku as well. We had same thing
Yes.
with Olympiacos. We had developed that partnership through her as well. And a lot of what you said is going to be like, it's going to be a little shocking for a lot of our followers, because so many of them will talk about like, oh, like the model we need to look to, like like Italian league. Like
Of
we'd
course,
look at the
because
money.
we're the neighbors. It's always like that. The grass is greener at our neighbor's place, and we're right across the water. So it makes sense, but it's not. It's really not. I always look back on fondly on this. There was this small Serie A team. Well, they got promoted to Serie A, Crotone, and it was the funniest thing because their stadium was so unprepared for the leap to Serie A. Their stadium was built right in front of a nursing home. So you had all these elderly people from the balconies watching the game for free. And the cameras were always set up so that you could see more of the nursing home rather than the stadium itself. It was ridiculous, but that's the kind of decadent product that Serie A is trying to sell us.
That's also in Greece, man. It's just hysterical. You'll have guys. I remember in COVID, we played a game against a small club in Greece in the north, called Pasianina in northern Epirus, so northern Greece, and literally the stadium's empty, but there's a bunch of people on top of this guy's house that's literally right next to the stadium, and you hear them screaming. It's
Of
the same
course.
situation.
Of course. Yeah, but it's and at least, but you watch a La Liga game. Watch a La Liga game. Go watch. I mean, even games that take place in the Canary Islands, like Las Palmas. You watch a broadcast, it feels different. It feels fresh. It feels like someone is actually trying to follow the Premier League model. In Italy, we're still so far behind, and nobody seems to be taking these things seriously. You have these foreign ownerships that do come in. Very often they're looked upon badly. The Italians, I think, like Greeks, very much tied to their tradition, very much tied to their
Yes.
sentiment of this is our past, you must honor it. We don't want foreigners handling the club, right? And I think that's why it was so key for Roma to appoint Mourinho when the Americans took over. But these foreign investors, they come in, and they once they realize what they're dealing with, it's pretty evident that it's a bad product. It's a bad
Yeah.
product because very often you have these ownerships that come in and then they leave. They scram as fast as possible.
Yeah. It's look, listen, we just did an interview with an executive of a different Super League club in Greece, and she was the first person. She's the CEO of that club, and she's the first executive I've spoken to from first division, from the second division sides, that was friendly to foreign ownership and foreign investment. The rest of them were like, no, don't bring it in here. It can't help us. The way things are, it'll only make us look worse. And
Absolutely, that's
yeah,
the thing in Italy. The longest standing ownerships in Italy are the provincial ones. It's Aurelio De Laurentiis, who has been running Napoli since 2004, so 20 years.
right.
Claudio Lotito, Lazio, also 20 years there. These are guys who have friendships in politics. Claudio Lotito is a politician; he's a senator. So, you know, that just it's bad. That just shows you. I mean, Italy. At the end of the day, Italy is the place where Silvio Berlusconi could be prime minister and
Yeah.
still own Mediaset and still own Milan. So, what are we talking about here?
Listen, I'm not. I could go on to the oligarchies over in Greece too, but I'm not. I'm not going to mention that. But it's just like it's so crazy. Like from the Greek side of things, a smaller league that's like looking to try and get its stuff together, and here we are here in Greece, like we're still trying to figure out how to get everybody to agree to collective bargaining so that we can take and negotiate and get TV rights easily to other countries, to other broadcasters. We don't even have that. So to hear
Yeah.
Serie A that you guys are having that same
Don't
problem.
follow us as an example. Don't do whatever. Do the opposite of what Serie A is doing, really, because it's not. And that's why I'm always so surprised when I'm still surprised that we have the same owners. I'm still surprised that Lina Suluku hasn't run away, because Lina Suluku, just going to her, she's been involved in every facet of what Roma have been doing in the last year and a half. Everything. she's handled everything. She's handled international deals to the tiniest, smallest, most inconsequential local thing, such as, inaugurating a local street with the name of a club legend or whatever, but like interacting on a very local level. So both the macro and the micro, and it just, I sometimes wonder what the hell do these people must think when they go home, and they're like, Jesus Christ, like, oh my God, I've spoken today to like 20 politicians whose names I don't remember, who I don't care. They all have dandruff. They look terrible, and they're all giving me problems. So what am I
Listen,
talking to them for?
for Lena, this is a Tuesday. Lena came from a Greek environment, which, first of all, is extremely toxic. She is working under a club like Olympiacos that demands success and goes through coaches in
And she's a
certain years.
woman. She's a woman in a macho environment, in an uber macho environment.
Right. There's not many of them. Like when I talk to she's friends with the CEO of Atromiros, Katia Koksenoglu, and when I talked to her and asked her about Lena, I was like, are you guys a sign that female executives are coming in Greece, or are you exceptions to the rule? And Katia said, no, we're just exceptions. Like that's
This is it. This is it. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's the same in Italy. I can't think of any female CEO in Italy besides Zina Suluco. I don't think of any president of a club that is female in Italy, maybe except for some wife or daughter. Like in our case, for just a few years, it was Rossella Sensi, who was the daughter of this longtime owner that we had when we won the Scudetto in 2001. But aside from that, really, it's all men, and
right.
it's all very, very toxic, as you say. I don't see it as an easy environment. So yeah, definitely, it's another Tuesday, because, man, oh man, some of the things that then I have to read as a reader, I go, holy crap, like, oh God, like, not this again, or not this guys, and then she has to deal with these people face to face.
I mean, but it's one of those things. It's like you guys found probably as perfect of a fit as you could. Talking on Lena, because we loved her here. Lena
Right.
was fantastic. She's what we would call a technocrat. Handled so much behind the scenes, probably so much more that we don't even know about.
For
And
sure, yeah. Yeah.
and she's so professional. She's extremely educated. Friend of the show, lovely woman to speak to as well. And I mean, she comes from this environment, and she literally, like, I like to equate it to like Genghis Khan, right? Survival of the fittest. Like, she had to survive, not just in general, but survive as a woman in this environment. And you found somebody that's like, oh man, I was dealing with this every day in Greece, and the product there is even worse. It's a smaller league, even more ridiculous. Here, everything's more high profile. I mean, it's like she was made to do it. So,
Yeah.
we love her. We love her from here. What is the take about her and the job that she's doing, all things considered, knowing the environment that it's like there? What do you guys think about her over there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because again, you have to consider, again, there's this, and I hate this provincial sentiment of, whatever bad is happening, it's always the outsider who's at fault. And like, even I have some friends who, even this summer, when Roma seemed to be on the verge of selling Dybala, I had friends who would be like sending me messages like, look at what she's doing. And I'd be like, what? Who's doing what? He's like, Lena, look what she's doing, like, behind the scenes, she's clearly, she's taking apart the team. She's not going to have the team ready for Daniele De Rossi. She's sabotaging the whole project, like all these things that are clearly, an expression of frustration, but that then someone has to be responsible for it. In this case, it's always the outsider. The one thing that with Roma is that with Roma under the Friedkins have been very quiet, very silent. They haven't said a word. The Friedkins, I think they've maybe released a statement maybe twice since they took over in 2020. They haven't said a word. They don't talk publicly. They don't go in front of the cameras. You can only see them sometimes at the stadium. Sometimes they have their picture taken in training. Nobody knows what they sound like. The voice was never caught in camera. Nothing. Lina Suluku, similarly at Roma, she's been okay, more outspoken in the fact that she's been present at certain public appearances, like if there is, the Europa League draw at Nyon or whatever, she's there, but still very low profile. And since she arrived, a lot of changes have taken place at Roma. Even the CEO that she replaced, I mean, he was sent packing by the Friedkins. This guy, they hired him to watch over the stadium project. The guy couldn't get the stadium project off the ground. They hired Linus Luku. They sent him packing. And then slowly you realize that I mean, the control that now she holds over the club is immense. More and more reports suggest that really she did basically a carte blanche, clean slate, hired the people that she wants to work with, hired the people that she knows and can rely on. She was very much involved in the process of selecting our sporting director. And so this efficiency, but behind the scenes, always scares Italians because Italians are very
Right.
demonstrative. I mean, again, Silvio Berlusconi, a guy who would go up in front of the media on an international stage during, say, a meeting about the war in Iraq, he would be like, "Yeah, I'm going to buy Ronaldinho," like, what? So always like a showman, but the Friedkins and Suluko have not been doing that. They've been going the other route, keeping a low profile, getting deals done. Suluku responsible for the sponsor, and a lot of, I mean, the fact that we've improved our revenue, we've cut down the costs, is in huge part thanks to Suluku. Like, she understood the assignment from the first day. But I can sense that for a lot of Roma fans who are used to a certain type of communication in Italian football, this sort of secrecy around her figure. What is it that she does exactly? What are her duties? It's a bit, I think it concerns a lot of people, because, mind you, even our sporting director is not really called a sporting director. His title is technical director Florent Ghisolfi. And
Oh,
Florent
just like
Ghisolfi,
Greece. We have no idea. Technical sporting director. That no,
it,
there's
but
no.
it but
Don't
it
know.
but there is a reason, because our good friend of the show and a really good journalist in Rome, Filippo Biafra, he explained that it was a clear indication, the technical director for Florent Ghisolfi, that title is because Lina Suluku, also as a CEO, takes up a lot of sporting decisions. So technically, he could not be called sporting director because she also shares duties in that realm.
Makes sense.
So it makes sense. But for a lot of fans, I feel like that is always a bit, like, why don't we know this? Like, why isn't this, general information? And from on one hand, I can understand, but on the other hand, it's still this provinciality that, in my opinion, kills a lot of what could be good about Italian football. It's just this feeling of, we have to do it like we did it in the 80s because that's when Italian football was at its best. No.
No, I hear you, and I'm guaranteeing you that when she took the job over there at Roma and the Freakins were interviewing her, probably the first thing she said was like, "If I'm coming in to do this, like, it's my project. I'm coming in, you're the owners.
My
I'm
my
running
way
things."
or the highway. Yeah.
Exactly, because that control she was never getting at Olympiacos, I'm telling you. Forget about just Marinakis, but the other individuals that technically were above her as when she was general director. There were other people that could supersede her on things, and she's the type of person is like, "Nope, things need to be done. I don't wanna have to keep checking here and here." So it doesn't surprise me at all that that's the type of role she's taking.
And listen, for me, it was very welcome because Roma were coming off a terrible period. Roma were, I think, I mean, like, you hear this in the Greek league all the time, because the only times we hear about the Greek league in Italy, it's when, I don't know, someone walks into a football pitch with a gun, or someone does
Oh,
something,
yeah.
that's when we hear about Italian, like,
Yep.
Greek football. So, um, and Roma were coming off a bit of a period of turbulence. They had the Roma president that we had before, also an American, was basically dropping out of the project. Everybody was getting sacked. We sacked the coach. We appointed Claudio Ranieri for just 12 games to get us to the end of the season. Our sporting director resigned. We appointed Paulo Fonseca, but without having a sporting director in place. Our transfer window for a long time was run by a CEO that wasn't really getting any job done. He was just relying on agents to do the job for him. He's now working for Al Nassr with Cristiano Ronaldo.
Familiar sound for
Yeah,
Olympiacos fans.
and with then we hired a sporting director who quit after 6 months into the job. We had no ownership. The coach was helpless. Paulo Fonseca didn't know if he was going to have a new contract or not. When the Friedkins took over, they came in a team that had missed Champions League football for already, I think, 2 consecutive years, and a team that was very much in debt, crippled by financial fair play, a dying project, and they had to pump it up. And their first steps were clearly the steps of owners who were trying to get a foot into the world of football. So they appointed Jose Mourinho. They appointed a Portuguese general manager to get along with Jose Mourinho. But once they won that Conference League trophy, once they got a taste of the Europa League and the Europa League final, they realized that they have to find someone who can give the whole project a shape, and that's what I feel Lina Suluco has been doing. She's been giving a shape to this project that the Friedkins have wanted to do. She's gotten our first sponsor, our first legitimate sponsor in years. First we had like some cryptocurrency scam that didn't even pay us on time. And finally we get a proper sponsor, a lot of partnerships with the Middle East, with the Far East. And then we have this idea that, yeah, this is a 3-year project. She helped get the talks with Daniele De Rossi going once Jose Mourinho was out the door. She secured the arrival of our new technical director. Yes. And so she is the architect. She has carte blanche, but she has carte blanche because the Friedkins realized that, yes, Roma was plummeting into the mediocrity that is Italian football, and they had to bring someone who could give it some international flair.
Absolutely, and she's definitely the type of person. As we've said to her in messages to her, we wish her the best. We always cheer her on and congratulate her when things go well. So I know she'll be successful for you because she's an amazing woman. And she's going to continue to do an amazing job there. So it was a great match for you guys. But shifting gears now, Andy, I do want to talk about some players also that have passed through the the ranks of Roma. We'll say you've had more than a couple Olympiacos players come through over the last couple of years. Vasilis Torosidis, Jose Horlebas. Kostas Manolas, who I know still lives in many people's memories with the goal he scored against Barcelona.
Of course.
So,
and
tell us a
last
little
but
bit
not
about them.
least, Madi Camara, of course.
And that's right, Madi. You guys had Madi, the little disappointment. That kid. That's unfortunately a mistake, but on the club as well, not selling him when we should have. But
very weird signing. I don't know what happened there. Clearly something went wrong, but yes, there is that connection, and I must say that we took guys like Torosidis or Holebas for granted, but those guys were quality compared to Roma. Have had notoriously over the years so many issues with the fullbacks. I mean, they've had guys who haven't been able to cross a decent ball in forever. We've relied on someone like Nicola Zaleski for I think over 110 matches. The guy has maybe 7 assists to his name, playing as a left winger, and left back. Okay, so Torosidis, in my mind, was like perhaps the highlight of this Olympiacos concert, but just because he was really underrated. I think Holebas as well. Honestly, Holebas was underrated compared to what we got afterwards. And Manolas, I mean, Manolas is in Roma's mind, and I think with Olympiacos, that I still think about that video where he gets jumped by that tiger or whatever, or
When he
that
left,
lion.
yeah. When he
I
left for
think that
Saudi Arabia
I think
or
that's yeah,
Qatar, sorry.
yeah. I think that's an accurate depiction of how his career is going. But Manolas came in at a time where Roma were getting rid of Benatia, and so that was a big blow because Benatia was huge. So big shoes to fill, and Manolas was amazing. For Roma at the start, he really sort of asserted himself with Tony Rudiger at the time, and then I think over the years, Manolas just became that kind of player who was too complacent,
Yep.
not hungry enough, and the goal against Barcelona lives on in the memory of everybody. I still think that he made a crucial mistake, which you should never make in places such as Rome, where or even Greece, for that matter, where fans go crazy. When he went to celebrate that goal, he celebrated it under the media section, where all the journalists are sitting around, farting and taking notes. He didn't go under the curva, under the fans with the ultras. I mean, that would have been legendary. What he did was great, but he should have had more of a presence of mind. I still think that Manolas could have been an even greater defender. He was great for a while, but he could have been even better had he just had a tiny bit more hunger. Because that's what eventually I think led to his fall off, which has been very drastic. And once he joined Napoli, that's it. His career was done.
That generation of Greek players in general, that's a criticism of almost all of them. Lack of ambition,
Yeah, they haven't. They
yeah,
didn't achieve anything international. I
nothing,
mean, what
nothing.
did Greece do in those years when Manolas was the supposed wall? Greece
Right.
was
We're
nowhere to
10
be
years
found.
without entrance into a major
That's
competition, and that's
crazy.
with
That's
Manola,
insane.
and yeah,
That's
and I mean,
insane.
and you look at one of his compatriots, guy that he played with while here at Olympiacos, Kostas Fortounis, who is part of the dying breed of tens, right? Traditional tens that existed. And he's another one. Like, this guy could have gone and played for West Ham not a few years ago, and he didn't want to. He his dream was to play in Greece. He never wanted to leave Olympiacos, which is, look, it's
Right.
fine. I get it, but somebody with more ambition would go to a top league. Doesn't matter if you're playing
Yeah,
at the
yeah,
table side.
definitely, and also, I think just it's sort of like also that I would even compare it a bit to that Turkey for a long time had this supposed golden generation that never amounted to anything. I
Right.
even like they had these players, these random players like Emre Mor. Remember Emre Mor, the guy who
He
played for
played at
Borussia?
Olympiacos for 6 months.
Exactly. Exactly, for 6 months, like you remember it because these guys that were like an illusion. I think Manolas, in part, was very emblematic of a generation of players that never really worked on themselves. Manolas, for example, just at some point just relied on pace. He just knew that
Yep.
he was fast, and he thought that would be enough to make up for it. But man, at some point he was getting bullied left and right just because he never worked on his physicality. So he was fast, sure, but at some point he started getting bullied by some of the worst strikers in Serie A. And I think that's what separated him from Tony Rudiger. Tony Rudiger stayed at Roma 2 seasons and then realized that I need to take the step forward. Went to Chelsea and now plays for Real Madrid,
Real
one
Madrid.
of the
Yep.
best defenders in the world. So that's the difference. And I think I still think that, for example, just Torosidis, in my mind, very romantic because he belonged to a specific time at Roma. Roma were in a bit of a transition period, and Torosidis did his job every time. Like he was one of those
That's him.
guys whom you could rely on. Nothing flashy, nothing showy.
Nope.
He just did enough, and that was great because then we were flooded with players in his position that would never amount to that same level of consistency.
No, and that was Torosidis to a T for the national team for Olympiacos. Like, the guy wasn't used, no step overs, back heels. This guy was just, he had some pace. He was very physical, a good cross, and you couldn't beat him. You couldn't beat him and a winger trying to beat him one-on-one was very difficult. So, like, very, very useful, a very useful player. And even here at Olympiacos, like, the fullback situation for us, like, we've had some very bad fullbacks. Like, we're very fortunate now. After Torosidis, it took some time. We got ourselves a very good fullback in Omar El Abdallawi for a while, Norwegian international, and now we have finally like two good fullbacks again in Brazilian Rodinei, who's probably done after this year, and then a very young Portuguese right fullback. But we know the fullback situation every year, except for this summer. We've been like, oh my god, who are fullbacks? Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
it's tough. It's tough, and that's why guys like Torosidis are hard to come by because it's a position that requires consistency. Both offensively and defensively, you have to be there. You have to have the presence of mind. Torosidis always played with the sort of maturity that very few players in that position in recent years have played with at Roma.
Absolutely. And not much you can do about those. What are your some memories? You've talked a lot about Manola and Torres, but what about some memories on Holebas?
Listen, I think because I think didn't Holebas. I think he went to Watford
Very
afterwards.
quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it was again that period where we had these. I mean, Holebas a bit less so than Torosidis. I don't have such vivid memories of him, but I still think that he had pace. He had a lot to give that I think whatever happened afterwards, it just didn't match. And I think Holebas, in terms of crossing accuracy at Roma, did much better than a lot of the other guys that came after him. I think Holebas was unlucky because he found himself, if my memory serves me correctly, he found himself having to play against Lucas Digne in that same position. Lucas Digne was just better,
Yeah.
and that's how it happened. But still, Holebas leaves obviously a fonder memory than Madi Camara, who to me is one of those unexplainable deals that Roma usually make around January in order to fix something, or at least they did so in the past. And they bring in these random guys that serve no purpose. Madi Camara was never taken into consideration by Mourinho. He was never relied upon. I think he made like maybe 6 appearances in total, something like
If
that.
that. Yeah.
He showed, I think, for the briefest of moments in one or two games, something good, a shot from outside the box, or I think he may have assisted a goal. That's it. But aside from that, he clearly was completely unable to adapt to the tempo and to the level of Serie A and to the Europa League. For some reason, he was also unable to contribute to our Europa League run that year, which is odd because we made it to the final, so we would have needed all the help we could get. Madi Camara
Right.
was never taken into consideration, so it's a weird deal. I don't know where he plays at right now, but
Falk,
it's
he's in
it's
Greece. Always
okay. There,
complained
there
about
you
wanting
go.
to leave Greece forever, and now he, as a
Well,
free
he got
agent, couldn't get a deal
because he
anywhere.
got a he got a taste of it. He got a taste of what it lies outside of Greece, and it's a bit too much for him. And at least he admitted it. But yeah, clearly a very very difficult player to sort of pinpoint as to what he's good at.
Yeah. Now, that so when that deal happened, that was about 2 seasons ago, or the season before last, I should say. When you got that was one of the worst seasons for Olympiacos ever. I mean, we went through
Mhm.
3 coaches that season. The summer of that season, we fired our coach Pedro Martins after we got embarrassed at Maccabi Haifa. He was at the club the longest tenured coach we've ever had. And then, but the football he was playing was garbage. It was getting really bad. We knew things were not going well. And then when we got embarrassed by Maccabi Haifa in qualifiers, that saw him out. We went through another couple coaches after that. Mahdi was one that we couldn't sell him at that point. We were way past his sell by date. He was not happy, and we were bringing players in. We brought so many players in, and it was just a bad situation. He was basically forced for a move, and I think the only place we could send him was Roma. But the rumor was that Mourinho wanted him there because I guess there was an option that he couldn't get, and this was just a quick loan that he wanted.
Yeah, well, but no, because there was, I think there was like an obligation that was tied to the number of appearances
Minutes,
that
yeah,
he was supposed to make. So
correct.
that's why he also stopped playing at a certain point, because Roma did not want to. I think also the price tag that was fixed on him then was ridiculous. But no, in Italy, nobody ever said anything of Mourinho wanting him. Mourinho, whenever he referred to Madi Camara, he just said that he's Madi. He's with us. He's part of the family, but more like a cheerleader. Like I'm not. I'm not taking into consideration. So that was definitely just Roma over the years have made so many of these deals, these temporary deals with no future to them. Thank God that recently they've sort of abstained from doing that, because in my opinion, that just means that you're doing things wrong. When in January you have to put your faith in a guy like Madi Camara, that means that
Right.
you're not going in the right direction.
Yeah, some of those you can't, usually for us also winter windows have not been good, except this past one before we won the conference league. Almost everybody we brought in, except for the 2 deadline day signings, were pretty good signings. Chiquinho, Andre Horta, David Carmo, who now is back. Great ones that we brought in. And yeah, but that's how it goes, man. And, with the winter signings, you're
Sure,
never
you
going to
you
get.
win some, you lose some, but the important thing, in my opinion, in mid-season is to not make rush decisions. That's something that Roma had been doing for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Andy, we coming up on over 45 minutes here, a little longer than the intention was, but we got to talking. I had one other question for you, but before we do the quick fire round. And it's a question that a lot of people have been talking about on the Olympiacos side of things related to the Conference League win. Because after the Conference League win, there was expectations, I guess, that kind of didn't meet the reality of what we thought would be. And we saw the pressure put on the club. You win a European title, you are now spoken about in a different conversation, but we expected that there would be a lot more interest in certain players than what actually materialized. Did you guys notice that? Did you guys when Roma won the Conference League, was there any disappointment over the notoriety that came from that? Or was it
Oh man.
expected for you?
Well, I think it was unexpected. I mean, in my opinion, the summer that followed our Conference League win was the best summer. As in, I mean, from a Romapress perspective, I mean, we went out of our way. So Mourinho gets his trophy with Roma. Like sort of it was meant to be, right? Like the special one who comes in, helps this club notorious for losing win their first European silverware in club history, win their first trophy in 14 years. Huge, huge, huge. So that storyline, I mean, we had so many so many clicks in those months. And then we signed Paulo Dybala, who also at that point was a huge deal. All of the streets of Rome were blocked, not only because the team was parading down the streets with the Conference League title, but also because the fans came out to greet Paulo Dybala. So Roma in that window signed Jorginho Wijnaldum from PSG on a loan. Unfortunately, it didn't work out because he broke his leg, of course. But I think the hype was there. The hype was there, and people were talking just because it was the first edition of the Conference League. It was still sort of this unknown trophy. And because Mourinho led the team, it had this very romantic quality to it. There was a lot of stuff happening, a lot of talk around it. I mean, we gained a lot of traction in those months. People took notice, people heard about this team, notorious for losing, that finally wins something, and on quite a pretty big stage against Feyenoord. Hard-fought final 1-0 with Mourinho at the helm, a coach who had been at that point had been written off in the Premier League, had come to Italy, and not many people really believed that he could do just anything. And he goes, and in his first year he wins this trophy. So it happened for Roma. Obviously, then I think the expectations went even further when in the next year they competed for the Europa League final and lost, unfortunately, to Sevilla. But
To our current coach, Jose
to your
Mourinho's
current
Borussia
coach, exactly, to your
Dortmund.
current, I mean, an absolute shithousery. It's incredible because the man has won two trophies, just shithousing his way to in the final. Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, you'd wish to win those two trophies just like that. There are coaches who sweat their asses off and come up with all kinds of plans, and your guy just went out and did it, got the job done. But I think, yes, it got people talking. Now for Roma, they're entering a difficult period because I think with Mourinho going away, they have to give credibility to what they're building, and that's what Lina Suluku is there for. That's what Daniele De Rossi is there for, and that's what the Friedkins are there for. The objective has become to win a European trophy, which was not an objective up until a few years ago. We had much better teams than the Roma squad that won the Conference League, not win any single thing. So the expectations were never go out in Europe and win a trophy. That's happened because of the Conference League. It was unexpected, but I think Roma embraced this this hype and are now trying to build something based on that.
I should have specified maybe a little bit better. Because yeah, no, as far as like, we even for us, like we got more traction. Definitely the name of Olympiacos is known a lot more because of that Conference League victory. I meant more on the player sales side of thing
But
because
the
we
players,
were
but the
very
play,
disappointed.
I know, I understand that you want to, but listen. I think that's where our reality is a bit separated because in Olympiacos you have to sell to survive. No, I mean
Right.
you have to. At Roma, we want to avoid doing that. Like we were never hoping to attract attention. When we won that Conference League, we were praying to the gods of football to spare us another summer where teams just come up and pick and choose the players that they want to take from us. So it didn't happen, and it didn't happen. Offers didn't come, or at least nobody was sold in that summer.
Got
And
it.
I interpret it as the strength of the ownership who worked in order to avoid having that happen. We had that before. Mohamed Salah, Alisson,
Right.
Raja Nainggolan. These are all players that left the club because the club had to sell, and they were hoping every year to have these offers come in because otherwise they would have not survived. Roma, thankfully, are not in a position right now to do it. So I'm just glad for that.
I see your point there, and that does make a lot more sense. I just know that like for us, like kind of we thought maybe certain players we would get maybe fees from or maybe be able to fill the coffers to make bigger transfers on our end because of that. And I guess we were a little bit disappointed with some of the interest with especially in some players, especially like guys like Cosas Fortunis and Daniel Podence. We ended up losing them to Saudi Arabia when we expected that maybe they would go to different leagues or otherwise. But anyway, that's besides the point. Andy, we've almost gone on an hour here, so I don't want to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for
Don't worry,
but
man.
we
Absolutely.
do we always do at the end of the segment, just very quick fire
Fire
round we
away.
call it.
Absolutely.
Uh First thing that comes to your mind just to get to know you a little bit better. So go ahead and tell us what's your favorite food.
Oh, it has to be a good amatriciana. So, very simple pasta, guanciale, canned tomatoes or fresh tomatoes, whatever you want, and then pecorino cheese sprinkled on top.
What about your favorite movie and show?
Well, that's a difficult question because I'm a movie buff. But if I have to say my favorite movie, I have to say Lost in Translation. And favorite TV show, there is a lot that come to mind, and I know it's going to be cliche. Well, no, I'm gonna say Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Would John's favorite be The Godfather? I've heard you on the show
Yeah, for sure.
make some
Yes, for sure. I
comments on
think the
his
God. I
Godfather.
think I think the Godfather and The Sopranos is the only media that he's consuming. I mean, that's that. I think the guy just wakes up with the music from The Sopranos blasting on his alarm clock for sure.
What about your favorite vacation spot?
Oh man, my vacation spot. I'm in it right now. I'm in Fuerteventura in the Canary Islands. So this is, I mean, for me, this is paradise. So you're talking to me from paradise.
I love it. I love it. Now, what's your favorite football related memory?
My favorite football related memory. Oh man. Well, I would. You'd be. Normally you'd think, well, a stadium, going to the stadium, watching a certain team play or win or whatever, a guy player score. My favorite football memory is when I scored a goal. I was, I think, 8 or 9, and it was this summer tournament, and I my sister's christening was happening on the same day, so I couldn't take part in all of the games in that tournament. My team went into the final. I came in for the final, and helped score the goal that put the game level 1-1. Unfortunately, we lost the game, but still, I just remember going in, having not trained at all, having no warm up, anything, scoring that one goal, and then doing the Luca Toni celebration.
You are the first person whose football related memory is an experience like that,
It's
like
my
of you
own. Yeah,
playing
it's
football.
absolutely.
Most people, it's related to, like, the club they follow or
No,
something else, so that's no,
screw
I
it.
appreciate that. It's
No, no, of
that's a
course.
good one.
No, you sometimes there are these things that stay with you, and I think, how many times have I watched a team play on TV, and how many times have I?
Right,
I mean, those are things that really are part of who you are.
absolutely. Now the last quick fire question is, if money was not an option, where would you like to go?
I think would have to be Japan. Yeah, Japan, and do all kinds of things. Japan, go to Okinawa, take the train through the big cities, take car into the countryside. I mean, sleep in the mountains, do whatever. But Japan for sure.
Love it. I absolutely love it. Andy, thank you again so much for joining us. It was an
Thank you, Ari.
absolute pleasure talking to you. So much fun getting your insights and kind of just talking about the similarities of Italy and Greece. I think some of my patrons and some of my audience are probably going to lose their minds when they hear like the problems Serie A has, and they're just going to think it's
Yep.
done for Greek football. We're never if Serie A can't do it, there's no way we can do it.
No, no, no. It's up to the fans to keep the hope alive. That's when you have to be more hopeful. Is when the
Right.
politicians, the businessmen, are not giving you a reason to be hopeful. That's when you have to be hopeful. That's when you have to be even more of a fan.
Exactly. So, Andy, thank you again. Guys,
Thank
this
you,
is
Ari.
Studios International, by the fans for the fans, joined by Andy Mattioli from IS Roma Press. Andy, where can everybody follow you guys?
Oh, you can follow us here on YouTube at AS Roma Press. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, always at AS Roma Press. You can follow us on the website, romapress.net. That's where you can get all your news about Roma, and you can have all the streaming platforms. Have our podcast on Roma Press Podcast available, Spotify, wherever you want. We're there. You can find us.
Fantastic. So you guys know where to watch them. So until next time, this is Studios International. I'm your host, Adi, and we'll see you soon in the future for even more interviews. Thank you very much.